Chapter 1034. The voice was so loud that it felt as if he was surrounded by giant bells that were as tall as two people. Just the sound waves alone were enough to shatter his soul. He could not resist it at all. The horrifying sound waves easily crashed into Malfurion's spiritual world. Even his soul felt numb. Malfurion tried his best not to succumb to the voice. Roddick and the others had already told him what kind of misfortune would befall everyone if he were to enter Azeroth. He used to think that these mysterious visitors were exaggerating the terror of Sargeras, the leader of the Burning Legion. Only after experiencing it for himself would he understand that the sins released by the hundreds of thousands of demons that had entered this world paled in comparison, not even a 10,000th of what Sargeras was capable of. "No, I won't serve you, Sargeras." In the past, the gentle druid was almost roaring these words in his spiritual world. Sargeras was too far away from this world. Although he was terrifying, his influence was limited. The druid was a powerhouse in the spiritual realm. With his strong willpower and long training in the Emerald Dream, Malfurion finally broke free from the whirlpool of thoughts. Malfurion could feel the terrifying anger that came from those eyes after crossing the endless void. At the same time, he understood that the evil will from the distorted void could not affect him in any way other than attacking his spiritual world. Malfurion tried his best to focus and ignore Sargeras' existence. He was only thinking about what failure would mean for the Night Elves and the entire world. Giving up on chanting the incantation, Malfurion's soul roared angrily. That was the trembling of nature. It was a roar against the power of darkness after contacting the wrath of nature. "Stop him." Savis, who had appeared at the door, shouted. In fact, Savis had rushed back as soon as he sensed that something was wrong. Be it him or the Eridar Gemini, they were both a step too slow. The Tree of Life seed had consumed almost all of Malfurion's magic power. However, no one had expected that the mini Tree of Life would nourish Malfurion at the last moment after it finished growing. A wisp of inconspicuous green light did not trigger the protective shield and directly filled the inside of the spell shield. The next moment, almost every being in Azhara felt a strong tremor from the Well of Eternity. Boom! It was a loud roar that sounded like a dam breaking. The dark water of the Well of Eternity, which had calmed down for a long time, boiled again. Near the walls of the well in 8 directions, east, west, south, north and southeast, suddenly appeared 8 large whirlpools that could easily swallow a house. At this moment, Best Actor Duque, who was presiding over the opening ceremony of the portal in the Mage Tower in the center of Azhara's Forbidden Palace, had a perfectly timed expression of shock. Those idiots. Who was he referring to as an idiot? Whoever was responsible for guarding the talisman shield was a dereliction of duty and a fool. Recently, Duque had been maintaining his shadow form. Now he directly turned into a thick cloud of black smoke and rushed out at high speed. This was one of the Shadow Priest's signature skills, Dissipate. Duque's Dissipate was fundamentally different from the Dissipate of ordinary priests. When he infused his entire body with the power of shadow, not only could he turn himself into pure shadow matter and remove all shackles on him, but he also had the effect of accelerating his charge. Perhaps this was the additional benefit of becoming a great Void Lord. His vision was black and white, but with the help of the System Elf, Duque could still see his surroundings clearly. Door after door and scenery after scenery flashed past him at high speed. He could not hear the sound of the wind, nor did he have any sense of taste or smell. The only thing that fell into Duque's eyes was Malfurion, who was highlighted by the system. At this moment, Malfurion was in a huge trouble. If it was him in the original history, he would only encounter Savis this time. According to the script, he could totally escape without any danger. Unfortunately, because he was kicked into the twisting nether by an irresponsible space dragon king, he ended up with 2 demon lords guarding the talisman shield. At this moment, Malfurion was in a desperate situation. The twins also knew that things were not looking good. Kill Jaden was generous to his subordinates, but the prerequisite was that they could complete the mission he gave them. On the other hand, if they could not complete the mission, especially a mission that did not seem particularly difficult, that would really be laughable. Guarding the talisman shield, ensuring that the Well of Eternity's mana supply to the giant portal, and thus ensuring that Archimonde and even Sargeras would descend. Everything was linked. No matter what the reason was messing up. The twins did not dare to imagine what kind of punishment they would receive. The only thing they could do now was to quickly catch the guy who caused the destruction before Kill Jaden's thunderous rage descended. At least this could make up for their mistakes. Otherwise, their positions as lords would come to an end. The power struggle within the Burning Legion was far more terrifying than outsiders could imagine. they were also not irreplaceable. For example, the Sylvanas had the ability to kick them out of their positions. What race was the Sylvanas? Perhaps no one reacted to this name, but the most famous representative of the Sylvanas was Mother Shiraz, who guarded the Black Temple in the future and tortured countless players. That's right. She was ambitious and devoted to ruling over all the female demons in the Burning Legion. She had 6 arms. Thinking about this, the Erida Geminis also went crazy. Envelop him, Shadow. Saloras waved her hand. Devour him, Flames? Elisa shouted. With the twins and Savi's magical black eyes, even if Malfurion was more ghostly than a ghost, he would not be able to get away with it. The Emerald Dream, as the name suggested, was a dream. Dreaming required one to relax mentally and enter the magical state of dreaming. Malfurion, who was not very familiar with the technique, needed time to re-enter the Emerald Dream. In order to destroy the Talisman Shield, his soul completely entered the real world. Facing the fierce attacks of the 2 demon lords, he instinctively raised his hand, seeking help from the air and wind. The power of nature and the power of shadows and flames collided in mid-air, causing a loud explosion. Fortunately, they were inside the Mage Tower. Since the Mage Tower could not detect Malfurion, it automatically activated the magic shield and became a useless teammate. That was how Malfurion escaped. Chapter 1035. But he would not be so lucky the next time. Savish charged at Malfurion. The artificial eye emitted black energy and hit Malfurion's soul. Woo! The dark power was so violent that Malfurion could not imagine what would have happened if he had been hit by the joint attack of 2 demon lords that were even more powerful than this one. Malfurion was almost in a panic. Basically, he dared to rush forward as long as there was no barrier of high-density elements in the direction he came from. He rushed through 3 thick walls in a single breath and rushed straight out of the Mage Tower. The Eridar twins had gone all out. Their surging magic power condensed into all kinds of spells and chased after Malfurion crazily. The power of shadow and flame was initially blocked by the barrier of the Mage Tower. Perhaps the violent magic power broke through the barrier, or perhaps Savi's realized that if he didn't close the barrier, he would only be harming himself and the Gemini. In the next moment, the twins' combined attack easily blew up 3 layers of walls and even a small teleportation portal that they passed by, shooting straight at Malfurion, who was outside of the Mage Tower. Despair. Malfurion was really in despair. His despair even crossed the void and was directly reflected in the body placed in Fort Raven. Looking at Malfurion, who was twitching and pale, and then stained with a trace of darkness, how could Tyron not know that Malfurion's soul was being attacked by dark energy? Tyron's face paled as she screamed, "No!" Malfurion. In the void, Malfurion, who had exhausted his magic power and could no longer hide, knew that he was done for. No matter how he dodged, he could not avoid the 2 magic attacks that were still under the control of the opponent's will. In the next instant, he would be struck, and then his soul would scatter, completely vanishing from this world. Farewell, Tyrant. In the darkest despair, Malfurion closed his eyes and waited for the final moment to come. Boom. The massive shadow and flame energy engulfed the entire plaza outside the Mage Tower, even hitting many of the demon soldiers who had just left the Mage Tower. The 3-meter-tall demon guards swayed like leaves in a storm. The aftermath of the berserk mana shattered the walls of the Forbidden Palace in the distance, and 2 shadow arrows struck down the night elf wizards who were standing guard at the entrance. This caused a huge commotion. Screams and screams could be heard everywhere. There were even moon guards shouting, "The traitors have reached the city." After closing his eyes, Malfurion's chest was fluctuating on his translucent soul, as if he were breathing irregularly. In fact, it was just a subconscious movement. As a spirit, he did not need to breathe. However, the will that still existed told him that he had not been completely destroyed by that terrifying joint attack. Opening his eyes, Malfurion suddenly found himself in an even worse situation. No, Malfurion was truly desperate this time, because he suddenly found that his soul was grasped by a black hand. He was taken prisoner. A few seconds later, the Erida twins and Savis arrived at the same time. Logically speaking, it was a good thing that this ghostly destroyer had been caught. Unfortunately, neither Savis nor the twins were happy at all. Because the one who had caught the despicable infiltrator was the person they wanted to see the most, the mysterious and powerful Great Lord of the Spies. Dark energy extended from the palm of Duque, who had returned to his human form, and turned into a huge black hand that firmly grasped Malfurion's soul. There was a frosty expression on Duque's well-defined dark face as if he was saying, "Look at what you've done." If Duque had reprimanded the three of them right from the start, they might have felt better, but Duque did not say a word. This silent pressure caused them to tremble with fear. The clear sky suddenly turned as dark as ink. The will of the demon king Sargeras had descended once more. A translucent image that was even larger than the entire 7-story mage tower appeared in front of all the surrounding demons and elves. It was obvious that Sargeras was furious. Otherwise he would not have used such a huge amount of mana to project his image. Kill Jaden. Look at what the idiots under you have done. With that, Sargeras' figure disappeared on the spot. Disappearing did not mean that this matter was over. On the contrary, this was just the beginning. Because CEO Sargeras' words had set the tone for this matter. As expected, the moment CEO Sargeras' will left, Kill Jaden arrived. His furious voice shook the Eridar twins and Savi so much that they vomited blood. This was not an adjective. They really vomited blood. The punishment from their souls made the twins of Erida spit out a mouthful of blood that was filled with magic power. It was hard to tell what color it was. Trash. All of you are trash. The Void Fleet has been assembled. Archimonde is ready to descend and all the schedules are fixed. Zailoras. Alicious. With the two of you watching, I actually let a low-level creature destroy the shield of the Well of Eternity? What use do I have for you two trash? Kill Jaden was a very patient great demon. He could spend hundreds of years to solve a problem that violence could not solve. On the other hand, he was also a perfectionist. He could tolerate accidents, but he definitely could not tolerate his subordinates making such a low-level mistake. As he roared, the punishment from their souls increased. The twins of Erida, who were originally full of feminine charm, were rolling on the ground in pain as he roared. Every inch of their skin looked as if it had been cut by a small knife, and it opened up on its own. On their smooth hands and feet, there were only bloody lumps of flesh. There were no screams because their voices had been sealed. Their sexy lips were open to the extreme, and only a silent cry was left. Savis, who was beside them, knelt on the ground, trembling. This terrifying torture lasted for a full 30 minutes. Every time the twins' souls or bodies were about to collapse, a few Erida dark acolytes who were summoned would cast dark healing on the twins to heal the wounds on their bodies. Then it would be the next round of torture. Even if you suffer in pain for tens of thousands of years, you will not be able to make up for your sins. Kill Jaden was still angry. At this time, Du, who knew that Malfurion would come to cause trouble in history, suggested to let the twins guard the shield and cause the twins to bleed. He stood up without a change in expression. Respected Lord Kill Jaden, actually, it might not be impossible to catch up to the army's plan. Chapter 1036. In the air, Kill Jaden's projection, which was only the size of a human, turned around. He had no pupils, only a pair of eyes that were spewing flames. Yet, everyone could tell that Kill Jaden was interested. Not just him, even the Eridar Gemini who were curled up on the ground, were suddenly attracted by a sense of disbelief. Even though they were extremely weak, dizzy, and spiritually tired, the Gemini struggled to raise their heads and listen to the conversation between Duque and Kill Jaden. Infernal affairs. Do you know what you're saying? This has nothing to do with you. I know. But the Eridar Gemini's failure is Lord Kill Jaden's failure, which is also my failure. I believe that I have the ability to make up for all of this. Duke said in a seemingly humble manner. Kill Jaden's projection narrowed his eyes. What do you need? Power? The Burning Legion has absolute power in Azhara City. This includes interrogating the captives, building the teleportation portal, setting up the new defense system, and the power to dispatch all the lords of the demons. Duque said calmly. In exchange, I'm willing to use my soul as a bet to build a teleportation portal that can accommodate Lord Archimonde's arrival within 7 days. Oh. If Kill Jaden had only been angry before, he was now filled with boundless joy. You can rebuild that complicated rune shield and speed up the construction of the teleportation portal? That thing isn't difficult. It'll take 2 days at most. Including debugging and gathering the mana of the Well of Eternity, it'll take a total of 4 days. And I said before that I only need 3 days to build the teleportation portal. In other words, if you leave everything to me, 7 days. No more, no less. Duque's words were resolute, powerful, and filled with absolute confidence. Even Kill Jaden couldn't help but be moved by this boldness. Kill Jaden definitely wasn't having a good time. If planet Azeroth was an unimportant low-level planet, it didn't matter if the attack failed. He could just send another legion over later. Anything that involved the creation titans of the Pantheon was definitely not simple. In the entire Burning Legion, only he, Archimonde, and Sargeras knew how important Azeroth was. Now that the Eridar Gemini had caused trouble, he couldn't absolve himself from the blame. Archimonde, who had always been at odds with him, wouldn't be nice to him, and he wouldn't be able to withstand Sargeras' anger. Once the plan was delayed, even if the Burning Legion succeeded, Archimonde would still be above him. Although he and Archimonde were both ministers, they had always been competitors as the three magnates of Eridar. Kil'jaeden was definitely not happy of him acknowledging a grandson of Azeroth. The current situation forced kills and kills of King of King. As long as you can complete the construction of the teleportation gate on time, not only will I double the reward I promised you and promote you to a High Lord, but I will also grant you 3 special requests that are worthy of this contribution. As long as you can complete the construction of the portal on time, not only will I double the reward that I promised you and promote you to a high-rank lord, I can also grant you 3 special requests that are worthy of this contribution. Of course, I will never tolerate those who mess up the plan, even if they are old subordinates that have followed me for many years. I promise to complete the mission. Duque promised solemnly. At this moment, Duque's heart was filled with ecstasy. He was so happy that his face was practically covered with a smile. This time his happiness wasn't fake. He was really over the moon. Burning Legion. Hast thou at last put thy neck upon my noose? The ill-intentioned Dew sneered. In Kil'jaeden's eyes, Duque's agitated and cold smile had another meaning: ambition. Kil'jaeden smiled too. Ambition was definitely a good thing for a Void Lord. It wasn't that you didn't have ambition, it was that your strength couldn't match up to your ambition. As of a superior, the last thing he was afraid of was a power struggle between his subordinates. The Burning Legion was an army of destruction made up of the cruelest and most violent races in the universe. It wasn't a charity. If you didn't have some means and strength, you deserved to be swallowed whole. Kil'jaeden glanced coldly at the kneeling Gemini and Savi's. He didn't care about Savi's and directly punished the Gemini's soul. After torturing the 2 pitiful creatures to death, he said to Duque, "Infernal affairs, I'll leave the Gemini to you. If you think they're still useful, let them redeem themselves. If they're useless, you can deal with them yourself." After saying that, Duque noticed an exquisite bracelet flying out from another portal not far away. As soon as he received it, Duque understood what it was. This thing was like the band-tightening spell that Tang Xing used to control Sun Wukong. With just a thought, he could activate the spell formation in the bracelet. By torturing the Gemini's soul, he could make the Eridar Gemini regret being born into this world. Of course, it wasn't impossible to kill the Gemini. However, doing so would definitely be disadvantageous to Duque. It was very simple. Did Duque have horns on his head? Did he have 3 whiskers on his chin that looked like ding-ding? Did he have a tail? Did he have hooves? F***CK, you're in the Burning Legion, and you're executing the elites of the Eridar tribe. What's the meaning of this? Before opening the portal, Duque could do anything to the Eridar Gemini, but he couldn't kill them. Once they were killed, Kil'jaeden would definitely focus all his attention on Duque. That wouldn't be fun. Understood. Duque lowered his head deeply. Kil'jaeden's consciousness dissipated. The surrounding air returned to its usual calmness. If it wasn't for the traces of destruction left behind by the shadows and flames, no one would have thought that an intense chase had just happened here. Duque glanced at Malfurion's soul, which was still in his dark power palm, and said coldly, "Be quiet, despicable night elves. Otherwise, I'll cut your soul into pieces and scatter your soul fragments to every filthy place in the world. Finally, I'll give your soul core to the Burning Legion Lord and let him deal with you according to his whims." Malfurion was terrified and in despair. Enveloped by Duque's dark power, he couldn't connect to the Emerald Dream no matter how hard he tried. Duque turned around and faced Savi's. "Take me to see the talisman shield." "Yes." Savi's lowered his noble head deeply. On the other side, due to the recovery of the mana supply from the Well of Eternity, the Night Elves who had been in an extremely weak position just now launched a counterattack. Chapter 1037. Just a moment ago, the Night Elves were like lambs waiting to be slaughtered, trembling in front of the endless demon army. Lord Ravenkay's face was ashen. He had overestimated the combat power of the elves after losing their magic and underestimated the power of the Burning Legion. On any battlefield, one of the two was enough to be fatal, not to mention both. If they were not completely wiped out, then they were really lucky. In just an hour of battle, more than 8 elven nobles of the rank of Earl and above had died in battle, and there were countless lesser nobles below them. This included the leader of the Moon Guards, Latusius. Latusius was a very powerful elf. He practiced both magic and martial arts, and his abilities could be said to be invincible among the elves. His opponent was an Apocalypse Guard Lord who was more than 5 meters tall and had a tan body. In terms of pure martial arts, Latusius was even slightly superior to the Demon Lord. The problem was his physique. No matter how strong Latusius was, he was still a night elf. After evolving from trolls to night elves, the elves obtained the powerful spellcasting ability that they dreamed of, but in exchange they lost the insane regenerative ability of the trolls. The Apocalypse Lord could take dozens of attacks that would be fatal to mortals, but unfortunately the night elves could only take one. Therefore, powerful demons often had more opportunities to make mistakes than elves. Latusius made a fatal mistake. In the beginning he had been paying attention and told himself not to use magic. When the battle entered the most intense stage, he forgot about this and subconsciously looked for an opening and chanted a spell. When the spell had no effect, he realized that without the magic support of the Well of Eternity, he could not instantly cast such a powerful spell. This cost him his life. The backlash from the magic power circuit slowed his movements by a beat. As a result, the Demon Lord opposite him seized the opportunity and used his green crescent-like fist blades to split Latusius into two. The death of the Moon Guard Lord was a huge blow to the morale of the Moon Guards who had defected to Lord Ravencase. Fortunately, Illidan's bravery made up for all this. Holding a scimitar that the elves rarely used, Illidan rushed over with incredible speed. He moved so fast that the naked eye couldn't follow him, circling around the Apocalypse Lord like a butterfly, slashing at it non-stop. If Illidan was just a fly, he might have been slapped to death like Latusius. However, Illidan was able to sneak into the Moon Guards because of his dual cultivation. Mana Ignition. This was a skill that would cause all mages a headache. It was known as the enemy of mages. Not only did he burn the Doomlord's mana, Illidan also paid attention to destroying the magic nodes between the Doomlord's magic circuits. Destroying the connection between multiple magic circuits would result in the imbalance of the opponent's magic power, and the damage would be multiplied. Finally, after a few rounds, Illidan yelled out, "Die, demon!" He beheaded the low-level Doomsday Lord's head as a trophy of war. He also took the enemy's fist blades, which were flickering with a strange yellow-green light. "Is that Xenos? Ah. From now on, you will be called the Warblade of Azeroth." Ha! Illidan held the two incomplete Warblades of Azeroth in one hand and raised the hideous head of the Apocalypse Lord Azeroth high up in the air. He shouted, "The enemy's Lord Azeroth has been killed by me, Illidan Stormrage." Oh! The surrounding Night Elves' morale was instantly boosted. The more disadvantaged they were, the more they needed a hero. Illidan could have become a hero on this battlefield, even if he lost this battle. However, just as Illidan was filled with joy and thought that he would be favored by Tyrande when he returned, something unexpected happened. It was a good thing for all the elves. It was a bad thing for Illidan. Because, along with an invisible and untouchable wave that suddenly swept through the entire place, the Heavenly Dragon King's body suddenly trembled. Every elf's face was filled with uncontrollable ecstasy. The demon, who was showing his cruel and bloodthirsty face, could not understand why these elves, who had almost given up and were purely fighting for their lives, suddenly became so excited. Soon they understood. More than half of the elves' hands lit up with magic. That's right. The Well of Eternity's magic supply to the branch vein had been restored. On the Kalimdor continent, where the Well of Eternity's magic branch vein was spread over half of the continent, magic was the true main melody. This was also the biggest reason why Kadorii could dominate half of the continent and beat the trolls and other races like dogs. The next moment, the entire atmosphere was shaken by the pouring of all kinds of magic. Whoosh whoosh whoosh, countless rays of magic light streaked across the sky like a meteor shower, smashing into the heads of the Burning Legion's demons. Even if there were many Cerberus in the Burning Legion, so what? Countless icicles fell from the sky. When the elemental materialization turned into physical attacks, that was when the Cerberus fell. Illidan was supposed to be the only star on this battlefield, but now there was Ronan. That's right. Ronan actually leveled up. On this chaotic battlefield. As a strong-willed mage, Ronan never lacked talent or patience but opportunity. Compared to Kadorii, who was used to borrowing external forces, he always insisted on using his own magic to fight. This was decided by the fact that human mages in later generations did not have a good source of magic. Therefore, he specialized in arcane magic, and as a basic magic circuit he was stronger than any other mage of the same age. In order to fight on the battlefield, Ronan kept clearing out all the magic in his body. Relying on the magic recovery from his exquisite equipment, he used up all his magic as soon as it recovered. Under such extreme pressure, he had unintentionally or unintentionally strengthened his control over magic. Because of the lack of magic, he needed to use magic more efficiently. Because magic recovery was not easy, he pursued the most cost-effective ratio between magic, and used the most suitable magic on the enemy that could affect the overall situation the most. Ronan, who was already on the verge of leveling up, waited with the Night Elves for the Well of Eternity's magic to arrive. Just by himself, he transferred away the magic that could supply 100,000 Earth mages. In the air behind Ronan, thousands of magic circles suddenly lit up with a bright purple and blue light. The brilliance of his magic overshadowed the entire Ravenkay's mage team. If the mage team's magic rain was a gentle breeze and drizzle, then the power of Ronan's move was the doomsday storm that could destroy the entire world. Arcane Missile, Storm. Chapter 1038. Every spell formation appeared out of thin air, pouring out mana to strike the enemy before disappearing. It was more dazzling than fireworks, more solemn than death. Compared to the demon army that only brought slaughter and destruction, Ronan's attacks were more like the art of war. At some point, the Ravenkay's mages were stunned and stopped what they were doing. Even though they had recovered their mana to the maximum, the combined damage of their entire team of 4 mages could not even compare to a tenth of Ronan's. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The seemingly endless arcane missiles whistled through the air, forming a continuous super long sound. The light released when the arcane elements hit the demons drew out a gigantic magic scroll. Using magic as the paint, and death as the embellishment, the huge Burning Legion vanguard completely became the background in front of Ronan, a newly advanced Breaking Dawn mage. Endless explosions rang out, blowing up thousands of pieces of evil demons' limbs of all sizes. Ronan used his arcane missile storm to plow the battlefield from left to right, front to back, over and over again. Every arcane missile had the power of a 7-pound cannon. It was like the sky was falling. It was like the earth was turning upside down. Every night elf became a witness to this miracle with their eyes wide open and their tongues tied. It wasn't that every Breaking Dawn great wizard with unlimited mana was as terrifying as they were. It was precisely because Ronan came from the magical holy land of humans, the Dalajan, that he developed the habit of accurately calculating the mana required for each arcane missile. It was also because he learned from Duque, who inherited the name of the Hundred-Handed Reaper, that he could master the super multicasting technique that no one else in history had ever mastered. Moreover, he had been training his skills day after day, year after year, and was equipped with magnificent equipment that transcended countless eras. On top of that, the elves had given him the password to the magical interface of the Well of Eternity. That was why he was able to launch such a crazy attack and such destructive power that could never be replicated. He almost single-handedly wiped out the entire Burning Legion vanguard. Ronan, a little wizard of humble birth, had finally reached the peak of his life on the most magnificent stage 10,000 years ago. Illidan's achievement of killing the enemy's leader was like the light of a firefly against the light of the sun in front of Ronan's achievement of destroying an entire army. Originally, Illidan would have been jealous, but with the arrival of a piece of news, all the victories and jealousy became dull. His brother Malfurion's Stormridge soul had been lost, and he had fallen into a state of absent-mindedness. Big brother? Illidan rode on the Hippogriphon and rushed back to Fort Raven as fast as he could. When he rushed into the room where his brother's body was placed, he saw Tyrande with tears streaming down her face and a group of druids who were as silent as death. What happened to my big brother? Who can tell me what happened to him? Was he killed? Or will he never wake up again? Illidan shook every elf he came across like a madman, eager to get an accurate answer from any of their mouths. Tyrande's beautiful face was full of tears, and her mouth was trembling. Finally she said, "I don't know. The druids can only confirm that Malfurion's soul is not in the Emerald Dream." What else? That's all. Are you trying to tell me that my great brother, who became a hero and saved the Night Elf army, died in a place where I can't see him? Illidan's determined face kept twitching, and his pair of amber eyes, which made his compatriots curious, flashed with an incomparably conflicted light. Yes. At this point in time, Illidan had not lost his eyes yet. He was still the moon guardian that his compatriots looked up to, and the strongest among the elves. When the leader of the moon guardians, Latuzius, died, Illidan, who had killed the Doomsday Lord named Azeroth, became the new leader of the moon guardians. It was almost certain that Illidan would become the new leader of the Moon Guardians. In the eyes of his compatriots, Illidan was already a hero. The problem was that at this moment, Malfurion, who had always been disliked by his compatriots, had suddenly sacrificed himself in order to enter Azhara with his soul and open up a path of survival for his compatriots. Malfurion suddenly had all the elements of a tragic hero. Perhaps the one who survived would be the final winner. But in the process of competing with his brother for Tyrant, Illidan, who was extremely proud of himself, knew that he did not want this result. Because, victory. No, we don't know. Tyrant cried, almost choking on her sobs. She was also very confused. As childhood friends and a strong person who grew up together, she had never thought about the scene of Malfurion or Illidan dying. The kind Tyrant did not even want to hurt either of them, so how could she think about such a terrible thing? Farewell, this seemingly distant word was so close. When it really came, Tyrant was at a loss. No, Sir Malfurion is probably not dead. His soul is probably captured. As the voice spoke, the elves turned around and saw the human mage hero who had just shown off on the battlefield standing at the door. If this human called Roddick was a night elf, he would have been revered as a god just because of this battle. But now, everyone was a little conflicted when they saw him. What the 300,000-strong army couldn't do, Roddick had done alone. While everyone was stunned, only Illidan remained clear-headed. Human, what do you think happened to Malfurion? You're saying that Malfurion used the Emerald Dream as a cover to destroy Azhara's shield that blocked the branch of magic power? Then he obviously succeeded. But he should have been taken captive. No, Tyrant screamed and covered her face with her hands. Clear tears still flowed out from between her tightly closed fingers. She did not dare to imagine what would happen to Malfurion after his soul was captured by the demons. Ronan walked over and carefully examined Malfurion's body. He was still breathing evenly as if he was just sleeping. No torture. His soul was not corrupted by the power of darkness. We should be glad that His Excellency Malfurion was simply a captive, or his soul was trapped. Regardless of whether his soul was captured or trapped, this was not a good thing for Tyrant and Illidan. Almost as soon as this conclusion came out, they began to despair and prepared themselves to lose Malfurion forever. Chapter 1039. In fact, there was something that Ronan did not say. This did not seem like something a Lord of the Burning Legion would do. As someone who had participated in the First and Second Dark Portal Wars, Ronan knew very well how dark the souls of warlocks were. As long as a soul was contaminated by darkness, the result would definitely be reflected on its body. The demons of the Burning Legion could not change their nature to kill and destroy. Malfurion dismantled the seal and delayed the opening of the portal of the Burning Legion. Considering the nature of the demons, how could they not torture Malfurion's soul? The biggest possibility was that his master, who had successfully infiltrated the higher-ups of the Burning Legion, had personally captured Malfurion's soul. Perhaps this was a very bad guess. He felt that his master, Duque, was intentionally or unintentionally using Malfurion's soul to do something. Ronan could not help but ask himself, was it really that easy to infiltrate a terrifying intergalactic demon organization like the Burning Legion? If his master had really fallen and was only using him and his companions who had traveled 10,000 years ago, then, on the other hand, his master had turned the rotten into the miraculous. The miraculous scene of his master forcefully transforming the power of darkness into holy light after being afflicted by Archeron's shadow curse was deeply imprinted in Luo Ning's mind. Duque was the one who had taught him and created the Great Alliance. Ronan always had the utmost respect for Duque. Two completely different thoughts attacked Ronan's rationality. Both sides were reasonable and both sides were possible. This kind of conflict almost drove Ronan crazy. Soon, Ronan no longer had the luxury to think about these things. News came that Lord Ravenkaz was preparing to launch an all-out attack on Azhara City. While the Elven Lords were enthusiastically discussing the route and plan of attack, only Ronan kept his cool. Wait. The Burning Legion is not as weak as you think. You should first ally with the Taurens and Dragons and then... Ronan shouted until his voice was hoarse, but none of the higher-ups were willing to listen to him. Even Tyrant and Illidan, who were originally friendly to the Transmigrators, became anxious because of the loss of Malfurion's soul. They wanted to kill their way into Azhara and save Malfurion. Illidan's eyes were even sharper. Contact the unreliable Taurens? Stop joking. Tyrant shook her head as well. Since the birth of Kaldorii, the dragon race has always been detached from the world. I don't think they will participate in the war. Ravenkaz's reason sounded even more convincing. His Excellency Malfurion Stormwind has opened the way for us with his sacrifice. Are we going to give up this great opportunity to attack for an impossible alliance? The talisman shield that could seal the various magic veins had been destroyed, but nobody knew to what extent it had been damaged or how long it would take for the enemy to repair it. The worst-case scenario is that the enemy will be able to repair the shield in a month. Therefore we must seize this opportunity to attack. Several high-tier elven wizards also expressed their reasonable opinions, explaining the complexity and difficulty of repairing the rune shield, but also emphasizing that it was not irreparable. Judging from this theory, it was definitely the best strategy to seize the opportunity to attack while the army could still use the power of the Well of Eternity. Otherwise they would have to wait until Azhara City sealed the mana vein again. Otherwise, when Azhara City sealed the magic veins again, the battle power of the army would be reduced by at least 70%. For the Kaldorii nobles, high elves, who were participating in the army, this was definitely disadvantageous, whether it was against the enemy or to increase the weight of their words in the so-called alliance. Ronan was so anxious that he was about to go crazy. No matter how hard he tried to persuade them, his throat was almost on fire, but he still could not extinguish the rash thoughts of these zealous elves. However, he still had one thought that he did not dare to say out loud. If it was Duque who wanted to repair the talisman shield, it would not even take a month. Only Ronan, as his disciple, had the deepest understanding of how monstrous his master was. One has to know that Luo Ning hadn't even learned a tenth of Duke's 100 hands technique. Controlling 12 hands of magic at different targets at the same time was already Ronan's limit, let alone the 100 hands. Ronan firmly believed that under the same conditions as his master, Duque's magic power and destructive power would definitely be 10 times, or even 100 times greater. Sigh. Ronan let out a long sigh as he watched the Night Elven army step into the abyss of death with despair. Standing on a makeshift platform, the venerable Ravencase used a sound amplification spell to spread his voice far and wide. The despicable demons are entrenched in our great capital of Kaldorii. These evil beings have captured our most beloved queen, and forced the beautiful Queen Azhara to kneel before the demon god. My fellow Kaldorii, can you allow such cruelty to happen? No, no, no. Hundreds of thousands of elves shouted in unison. On the vast grassland, neatly arranged square formations were densely packed. After today's battle, the victory had inspired the other lords and elves. Countless elves heard the news and came to join the army. In just 2 days the army had swelled to a terrifying number of 500,000. The lords who had just died had to be compensated with double the amount. It was the same for the military strength. Every elf's eyes were red, and they could not wait to charge into the city of Azhara and wipe out the demons. Ravencase raised his clenched fist high and slammed it down on the podium with a loud bang. This loud bang was also transmitted to the entire army through a sound amplification spell. My compatriots, then what are we waiting for? For our beautiful Kaldorii Empire. For Her Majesty the Queen. To Azhara, attack, attack, attack. The violent momentum that seemed to be able to overturn the entire world infected every night elf. They raised the weapons in their hands and shouted to vent the excitement in their hearts. The intelligence of the army was quickly sent to Azhara's forbidden palace in the form of a secret letter. Ironically, Ravencase's act of saving the queen did not gain the praise of the Supreme Queen in his heart, but instead incurred the wrath of the queen. You ungrateful old dog, how dare you obstruct the coming of my husband, and the birth of the powerful Darksider world? The queen's beautiful brows were scrunched together, and her exquisite face was filled with irrepressible anger. Suddenly the queen shouted, Verosin. Chapter 1040. A burly figure emerged from the crowd. Verosin, the captain of her guards, knelt on one knee and placed a fist on his chest. I am the Supreme Empress. My dear captain, you know what to do when it comes to traitors like Ravencase who stand in the way of my great cause. I know. Verosin replied firmly, and his figure quickly disappeared in front of the queen. Looking at the green demonic smoke rolling like clouds outside the balcony, the queen's face showed a rare cold expression. If the great high elves do nothing but open the door and watch my husband arrive, wouldn't that make me, the queen, useless? At the same time in the city of Azhara, a dozen lords gathered. Especially the lords of the abyss led by Manaroth, their faces were filled with indignation and resentment. But no matter how indignant they were, they could only keep it to themselves, because the one standing on the balcony of the Mage Tower was the lord of the infernal underworld, personally appointed by Kill Jaden to be in charge of all matters in the Burning Legion before the door was opened. If not for the defeat 2 days ago, perhaps Manaroth could still look for Archimonde and use his connections to fight against the commander of the infernal underworld. But failure was unforgivable. Especially when an entire vanguard of the Burning Legion was completely wiped out, and even Lord Azeroth, who was in charge of the vanguard, was killed. This was a humiliating failure that the Burning Legion had not experienced for thousands of years. Even Manaroth, the temporary military chief, was to be held accountable, but the infernal underworld, who had contributed to the opening of the door, took the opportunity to climb up. Although the lords knew that the commander of the infernal underworld was temporary, it was still very displeasing. Duque stood on the balcony, and his sharp Eridar voice was transmitted to the ears of every lord through the amplification magic. Failure. Why is there a failure? Why would the Burning Legion, which has destroyed countless planets, lose an entire army on a border planet like this? A lord. And the seal on his magic branch was removed? How did this continuous humiliation come about? Facing Duque's aggressive questioning, the lords who had committed a crime could not help but lower their heads. Regardless of whether he was willing or not. The Eridar twins, Manaroth, and the other lords of the Abyss did not dare to meet Duque's burning gaze. Wherever Duque looked, they would lower their proud heads. Perhaps, when they found out Duque's true identity, they would be so angry that they would have a heart attack or a cerebral hemorrhage on the spot. But at this moment, these proud soldiers who had been invincible in the universe for thousands of years could only listen to Duque's lecture like obedient children. Thousands of years of continuous victories have given you meaningless arrogance and underestimation of your enemies. This was a disgrace brought about by carelessness. This was also the shame of the entire Burning Legion. Enough. That's enough, you useless people. From this moment on, all of you will listen to my instructions. Those who disobey will be personally punished by His Majesty Sargeras in the twisting nether for your worthless soul and body. Every Void Lord, be it the Eridar twins or the Lords of the Abyss who had joined the army later, shuddered violently. If it was the boss of a rival, it would be no different from farting. But this time, it was Sargeras who was angry, and the direct superiors of all the demons, Kill Jaden and Archimonde, vented their anger at the same time. This was something that no one could bear. Duque pointed outside the city. There are more than 500,000 inferior creatures who think of themselves as nobles approaching this city. Manaroth, bring all the lords of the Abyss to destroy them. Even though he was a little hesitant, Manaroth did not dare to disobey. He immediately answered, yes. At this moment, a strange seal started to float above Duque's left palm. It was the rune shield that had been destroyed by Malfurion and controlled the magic branch of the Well of Eternity. Duque cleared his throat and lowered his voice. My heart aches. The Eridar warlock leader of the army actually told me that it would take at least 2 months to repair this little thing made by this inferior race. Is this the power of the warlock squad that the army is so proud of? How could you tolerate the super mage who wiped out an entire army of ours, and use the power of the Well of Eternity beneath our feet to pour his magic on the heads of the great warriors of the army? Be it the Gemini or the warlock leader Ganisak, they all lowered their heads in shame and pressed their foreheads heavily against the cold ground. They were not pretending to be ashamed. Be it Auras or Queen Saloras, they were truly ashamed. The magic of the army was more inclined towards attack and destruction. They were not good at this kind of control-type magic. Moreover, the rune shield that had been made by a few Breaking Dawn archmages back then had a level of finesse comparable to the magic of the army. The palm-sized rune shield had more than 1,024 magic formations of various sizes, and each formation was interconnected. The large formations were only the size of the smallest screw, and the small ones could not be seen with the naked eye and could only be sensed with the mind. Moreover, the charm shield was connected to the magic control circuits on the branches. Even if he wanted to build a new controller, it would take him at least a year and a half to figure out the circuits and password locks on the branches. There was no way he could build a new controller. 2 months to rebuild this rune shield that had already been more than 1/3 destroyed by nature magic. This was the answer that Ganisak and the Gemini came up with after studying it for an entire day and bragging to the extreme. However, with the pressure from the 3 big shots of the army above them, the 3 of them did not dare to participate in the slightest and only dared to give a deadline of 2 months. Duque glanced at the 3 shivering Eridar warlock lords and sneered. Ganisak, stay here and help me. As for Auras and Saloras, go to the outer city of Azhara and watch it for me. Don't let any more rats slip in. Yes. The Eridar Gemini trembled and finally accepted the order. A few days ago, they were still noble lords and chief adjutants by Kill Jaden's side. Now, because of a single failure, they were actually sent by Duque to guard the door. This humiliation was truly unforgettable. However, they did not dare to act up. Because of their mistakes, Duque was already being lenient towards them. Of course, demons were all ungrateful fellows. They would definitely write down the 3 words infernal affairs in the little black notebook in their hearts. Duque did not care. He was here to dig a hole. When the day came when he buried the Burning Legion, would he care whether the Burning Legion hated him or not? Duque laughed shamelessly in his heart. Chapter 1041. Malfurion felt that his view of the world was collapsing. He had been captured. Beyond his imagination, as the one who had ruined the Burning Legion's plan, he had already prepared for the worst. In the dark power that had captured him, he had seen how the 2 female demon lords guarding the shield were punished. He had also heard the strange human lord who had captured him say that a vanguard of the Burning Legion had been destroyed because of him. Logically speaking, the Burning Legion should not have let him go after he had caused such a huge amount of damage. Malfurion could not stop thinking to himself, "Tyrant, I have finally saved Cadores at least for the time being." Malfurion believed that he could welcome the end of his soul with a smile. Even if what awaited him on the road ahead was the most terrifying torture. However, there was no torture of any kind, not even a small punishment of the soul. He was like a spectator, imprisoned in a small soul ring on the Lord of the Infernal Realm's finger. Although he clearly heard the strange lord say that he would torture him and force him to reveal the method he had used to sneak into Azhara, he seemed to have been forgotten. The human lord who had defected to the Burning Legion did not pay any attention to him at all. Forgotten? He really hoped that it was true. Very soon, Malfurion discovered that the Infernal Realm was punishing him in the most cruel way in the world. First, the Infernal Realm stuck the soul ring to a metal tube. Only when the image from the outside and the sound from the vibration of the metal tube did he realize the despicable face of Queen Azhara. As the queen who had single-handedly introduced the Burning Legion, she had actually chosen to send an assassin to kill a loyal subject who resisted the destruction of the Burning Legion. Late at night the next day, when Malfurion saw Ravenkay's head with a clear expression of disbelief through the soul crystal, Malfurion felt that his world was beginning to collapse. Perhaps this lord who was willing to sacrifice his life and soul for the queen was unwilling to believe until the moment of his death that the captain of the queen's guards would kill him. The assassination of Ravenkay's and the leaderless state of the king's army were not the worst. The most terrifying thing was that the shield that Malfurion thought would take months to repair was repaired by the Infernal Realm. Although the force of nature did not completely destroy the magic gear, it was more than 300 years ago that the magic gear was built. A lot of information from back then had been lost in the war. Even Queen Azhara said that it was impossible for her to provide complete information. However, this silent lord of the infernal underworld was as relaxed as if he was playing with mud. In front of several demon lords, he spent only 3 hours to create a brand new runic shield. Malfurion was not an arcanist, but through his soul crystal, he could clearly see that there were close to 10 Breaking Dawn mages, including Savis, Eridar, and the twin demons who had injured him. All of them had shocked expressions on their faces. It was a skill far beyond this era. At first there were only a few mages observing, but later on even Kill Jaden's will personally came. This lord of the infernal underworld did not stop for even half a second. In order to restore the period of time that several Breaking Dawn archmages had bitterly worked on for several years, ignoring the lack of blueprints and recasting the incomparably intricate multiple control spell formation control system, this human liege used his nimble fingers to tug at close to 100 strands of mana that were thinner than hair, easily accomplishing what so many magic liege had failed to do. The moment Duque finished, Kill Jaden did not even look at him again, nor did he consider whether Duque's newly created runic shield needed to be tested. He simply said, "Well done, infernal underworld. After opening the door, you will receive a reward above your standard." Kill Jaden's will immediately left. Evidently he had more important things to do. Previously, because the mana of the Well of Eternity had been diverted, the matter of opening the teleportation door could only be put on hold. This directly caused the army fleet waiting in the distorted void to come to a standstill. Now there had to be a commander to restart the preparations that had been stalled. That commander was definitely not Archimonde, who was in charge of charging and breaking through the enemy lines. Duque, who bowed respectfully to send Kill Jaden off, straightened his body again. In his shadow form, his face outlined a cold and arrogant contour. Tell Manaroth that his enemies will lose the mana that they are so proud of the moment the army attacks." Duke's words were like a death sentence to the king's supporters. In fact, ever since returning to 10,000 years ago, when he had mistakenly entered the distorted void, Duke had been thinking about whether to save these night elves who had endlessly courted death in the ancient war. While the high elves who had led the Burning Legion and were not worthy of pity, Duke still gave up on the people who had come to protect the king after much consideration. If Ravencase had successfully rescued Empress Azhara from the Burning Legion, what would have happened? This was originally a topic worth investigating. Unfortunately, Duke was not interested. Duke did not believe that the nobles of the High Elves who were also part of the king's party had not heard any rumors. Deep down, the king's party still pursued endless arcane magic and absolute rule over the continent. However, they belonged to the party that had been abandoned by the Empress. Everything they had done was purely because they were unwilling to be abandoned, and they wanted to fight for power and revenge. War had always required sacrifices. In order to make the Burning Legion suffer as a human, Duke had no qualms about abandoning Kador, who was not even considered part of the human alliance at this point in time. Moreover, no matter how cruel it was, Duque was only maintaining the original history. Thus, half a day later, Duque unsurprisingly received news that the 500,000 elves had almost been completely defeated. Although it was said to be almost, it was because there were a few experts who surprised the army lords. With their superior individual combat power, they had blocked the attacks of more than 10 lords, including Manaroth and 100,000 elite demons, giving the remaining elves an incomparably precious half an hour. "Lord Sphinx, that mantis shrimp of yours has defected to the enemy. He even killed the Lord of the Abyss, Brugerton, with his own hands," Queen Saloras reported. While ridiculing Grandpa Ho's abyssal lord nemesis Halo in his heart, Best Actor Duke let out a cold laugh. "Whatever. Anyway, Lord Archimond is about to descend. All those who resist on this planet will meet their end." On the 7th day after Malfurion destroyed the rune shield, Duque opened the largest teleportation gate in the history of this world, according to his agreement with Kill Jaden. The commander of the Burning Legion, Archimond, descended. Chapter 1042. Ever since the Burning Legion began to use the power of the Well of Eternity, the dark water of the well had never been calm. It was in a state of turbulence almost all the time. But it had never been like this, with waves far higher than the ones in the Forbidden Palace. The dark water of the well shot up into the sky, roaring as it clashed and collided with each other, stirring up rings of magical mist. Then lightning flashed and the sky flashed gold, crimson, and finally faded to the standard yellow-green of dark energy. The sky seemed to have split open, and a huge hole was formed between the torn clouds. Accompanied by the rumbling of thunder, it was as if thousands of stars had fallen from the universe. The ink-like dark light crossed the endless void and descended on the side of the Well of Eternity, on the huge oval-shaped portal that was over 100 meters tall. The surface of the portal, which was originally empty, rippled violently, as if thousands of half-dragons were running wildly on the surface of the mirror, emitting a strong sense of shock and ear-piercing roar. Over 1,000 high elves of various sizes stood not far from the portal under the leadership of the queen. Together with a large number of demonic guards, they lined up in neat rows to welcome the arrival of this important figure of the Burning Legion. The massive magic had caused a drastic change in the weather, and the thoughts of the high elves were like this stormy night. No one knew if they were about to usher in a storm of change, or a true destruction. Only Queen Azhara and Savis, with the most excited hearts, looked forward to the next scene. This was the most capable general of the Creator, in their hearts. How would they get along with Lord Archimond? When the ripples on the portal reached the most intense moment, a pair of green-skinned giant hands finally broke through the barrier of space, and a few fingers as thick as horse carriages stretched out from the portal. Soon, a giant taller than the most majestic Forbidden Palace in Azhara stepped out of the portal. The shock that the high elves felt when they first saw Archimond was indescribable. It was as if they had really seen a god descending, and they all prostrated on the ground, maintaining a kneeling posture, not daring to move. Queen Azhara lifted her lily-like white dress and jogged all the way to Archimond. She cleared her throat and sang in her incomparably sweet voice. Queen Azhara of Caldorii pays her respects to Lord Archimond. Originally, the beautiful queen still had a lot to say, but who would have thought that this incomparably mighty and domineering army commander would not even pay attention to the queen? Instead, he turned his head and looked at the black man, who was even smaller than the queen. "Infernal affairs?" After making this statement that outsiders could not understand, Archimonde ignored everyone and took a step that was dozens of meters long. He stepped on the ruins of the outer city of Azhara, making a loud sound of crushing debris, and left on his own. A gust of cold wind blew. Suddenly it was very cold. Everyone felt that Queen Azhara's passionate heart had been chilled by Archimonde's arrogance and rudeness, turning into winter snow that was blown away by the gust of wind. What was the meaning of sticking warm noodles to cold buttocks? This was it. They sacrificed their own people and betrayed their own country, and this was the result they got in exchange. Whether it was Queen Azhara or Savi's, they all had a look of disbelief on their faces. No, it should be said that they were dumbfounded. At this moment, almost all of the High Elves felt that something was wrong. If the Burning Legion or their god really valued them, would they behave like this? Would the Creator Sargeras really do as he promised and grant them greater power? Humph! Archimonde, you bastard! One day you will have your retribution. Looking in the direction that Archimonde had left, Duque, who was cursing in the Eridar language, spat on the ground. Not to mention Queen Azhara, who had recently become overly self-conscious and had started to diligently study the Eridar language, or Savi's, who had always been a lapdog. Even the High Elves who did not know the Eridar language could easily feel Duque's anger towards Archimonde. It wasn't just Duque. The Eridar twins and the group of Eridar Magi were obviously unhappy with Archimonde. Queen Azhara felt that she seemed to have caught on to something. Duque bowed to the queen. Although it was not very formal, it was still a show of respect. Then he spoke in the Kaldorii language. My apologies, Your Majesty. Please ignore that brute Archimonde. Although he is the commander of the Burning Legion, he is actually a battle maniac who only knows how to fight and kill. Other than killing and destruction, his brain basically has no capacity for anything else. Of course, he is also the #1 warrior of the Legion. Then you are? Of course we are serving the great and wise Lord Kil'jaeden. Movie King Duque appropriately took a side in front of everyone and showed his respect for Kil'jaeden. Those who were with Archimonde had all left. The ones left here were of course Kil'jaeden's loyal followers. Even in a major battle, the subordinates of the two demon commanders would work together. Working together was one thing, but whether or not they were happy with each other was another matter. How could the intense competition that had lasted for more than 20,000 years be dissolved so easily? Seeing this scene, Queen Azhara subconsciously applied the template of the elves' court struggles to the Burning Legion. Of course, to fool the High Elves one had to have something concrete. Duque rattled on, speaking at a speed that a newbie would never be able to keep up with, to the Eridar twins beside him. After hearing this, because Duque had opened the door in time, the twins, who had recovered from their state of atonement, showed an expression that said, "You're so bad, but I understand you." The twins returned quickly, twisting their seductive waists as they pushed a cart full of things. However, everything on the cart was covered by a thick black magic cloak, making it impossible to see what was inside. Pushing the cart in front of Queen Azhara, Duque took off the magic cloak and revealed what was underneath. It was a super-high magic crystal that emitted an emerald glow. Each of them was about the size of a 330 milliliters mineral water bottle before Duque traveled to this world, and they were all neatly cut into hexagonal prismatic crystal shapes. Duque took out a scroll from his sleeve and handed it to Sarvis, who was beside Queen Azhara. Duque said with a straight face, "These are the dark energy crystals that Kador has always wanted. As long as you modify your body according to the method on the scroll, you will have the chance to evolve yourself and make your body more adapted to dark energy. Of course, not everyone can adapt to the great dark energy. Inferior beings that cannot adapt will be ruthlessly eliminated." Chapter 1043. What about those who can adapt? Azhara asked. Duque smiled and didn't say anything. A cluster of dark rays shot out from his hand towards a collapsed wizard tower in the outer city. Darkness silently swallowed up everything around it. The entire 5-story wizard tower, along with the broken tiles and debris within a radius of 200 meters, turned into black nothingness in an instant. They were completely erased from this world. A few months ago, I was just a survivor from a border planet that was conquered by the army. Fortunately, with the appreciation of Sololas and Auras, I was able to discover my abilities. Now, I'm a mid-level Void Lord of the Burning Legion. No, you're already a high-level Lord. Caught off guard, Kil'jaeden's will descended. Along with the appearance of a huge shadow, his loud voice resounded throughout the entire square. In an instant, all the lords and the high elves who had just gotten up knelt down again. "Infernal Affairs, you've done well. The army has always appreciated talented and strong people. And you're their role model. So, from today onwards you're a high-level lord. The rewards I've promised will definitely be yours. This is the list. Tell either Auras or Sailor Ras after you've made your choice. Kill Jaden's fiery eyes glanced at Queen Azhara. Azhara, when you cooperate with Infernal Affairs and open the final door to welcome Lord Sargeras, you'll get what you want. Thank you, Lord. Kill Jaden. Azhara bowed deeply. Kill, Jaden looked at Duque again. With Azhara City as the center, you'll be responsible for everything within a radius of 300 kilometers. As long as you don't make low-level mistakes like them. After the final door is opened, there will be more rewards. Thank you, Lord. Duque continued to act like a grandson. Infernal Affairs. When will the teleportation door that can allow Lord Sargeras to pass through be built? Building a teleportation door that can allow Lord Archimonde to pass through is already the limit of what I can do now. The Guardian of Planet Azeroth has been alerted. Now that the planet's protective circle has been activated, I can't even teleport you, Sir. Kill Jaden, here before I get rid of the Guardian of this planet. Furthermore, it doesn't seem to be enough to simply use the power of the Well of Eternity. Kill Jaden was not surprised by the answer. Get ready. When there's progress, I want you to open the portal immediately. No problem. Leave it to me, Infernal Affairs. Suddenly, Kil'jaeden changed the topic and transmitted his voice directly into Duque's spiritual sea. Infernal Affairs, you just did a great thing. Archimonde considered Caldorii to be worthless, and such a clumsy approach was not advisable. That's why you didn't hesitate to use the dark energy gems given to you by the army as a reward for Cadores. I think you did the right thing. Thank you for your understanding, my lord. Inferior beings are destined to be eliminated. A powerful existence that believed in the army must be rewarded. I've already suggested this to Lord Sargeras. Before Kil'jaeden's voice trailed off, Sargeras's will had already descended. Sargeras praised Savis, who was loyal to him, and then forgave Savis for his failure in destroying the runic shield. Finally, he gave Savis the reward he had been dreaming of. My most loyal servant, Savis. I can grant you the power you desire, but this will change your form. Can you accept such a change? It doesn't matter what I become. Please grant me power. Looking at Savis, who was trembling with ecstasy, Duque secretly sighed in his heart. The High Elf's obsession with power had reached a point that a human like him could not understand. Unlike the original history, Savis was killed by Malfurion while he was guarding the runic shield. In this life, because of the Eridar Gemini's intervention, Savis was still alive and kicking. But now, it seemed that he was going to become the first satyr in the history of Azeroth. Queen Azhara's mouth twitched, but she did not stop Savis in the end. Just like that, under the watchful eyes of the High Elves, a yellow-green light passed through the portal and shot onto Savis's body. Sargeras had personally forged a body for Savis, a body with split hooves, unkempt goat legs, goat-like horns, razor-sharp claws, and a long lion's tail. Although Savis did not even manage to guard the precious runic shield, he was the first elf to connect with Sargeras's will in the process of researching the Well of Eternity. As a guide, as a model example of buying a horse's bones with money. Sargeras must have thought that Savis had considerable value, so other than transforming this fellow who was equivalent to a fanatic, he also gave Savis a special power. I confer upon you the ancestor of satyrs. Yes. From that moment on, Savis had the ability to use a demon's curse to turn other creatures into satyrs. This was also the reason for the birth of the second, third, and many more satyrs in history. And the new satyrs could then corrupt the next generation of satyrs, allowing the satyrs to flourish. Savis's new body made Queen Azhara feel a little melancholy. Obviously, this did not conform to the queen's aesthetics. However, this was Savis's own choice, and even she could not say anything. But when the queen saw the fanatical gazes of many high elves staring at Savis, who was bursting with demigod-level magic, the queen suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. That was the displeasure of her power being divided. However, she, who was in a state of leading a wolf into the house, no longer had any right to say no. Time passed quickly. Because Duque opened the portal in advance and brought in the main force of the Archimonde Burning Legion, and because of Krasus's public relations with the dragons fell into a standstill, the elven army was naturally beaten like dogs. After losing Lord Ravencase, the elven aristocrat who succeeded him was scum. In the end, nearly 1 million elves were slaughtered, and their territory fell again and again. At the end of the first month after the Archimonde's arrival, the main city of the elves, Surlama, fell. In the second month, the dragons participated in the war, But at this time, as the guardian of the earth, Nesario rebelled as he did in history. In the name of forging the dragon's soul, he directly caused the dragons to bleed. The situation was becoming more and more unfavorable to the native races of Azeroth. In the first battle of the third month, Tyrant Whisperwind, who was exhausted, was captured by Savis. Chapter 1044. The failure of Surima city could not be blamed on the nobles and Tyrant, who were the successors of Ravenkais. Ravenkais' first victory was an abnormal product, and it could not even be said to be lucky. It was simply a matter of extreme risk to count on when the ultimate weapon in the hands of the enemy would be activated. The power of the Well of Eternity was cut off by Duque, and most of the elven mages died. Furthermore, in order to make up for their first failure, the Burning Legion gathered many times the combat power of the elven army every time they attacked. Manaroth led more than 10 Void Lords to charge together. How could the elves who did not have that many heroic domain masters resist? That's right, when Moon Goddess Elun contacted the dragons to support them, the dragons were also unlucky. At this point in time, even though the dragons had the largest number, ever since the formation of the dragon army in Azeroth, they had never experienced any large-scale battles. The dragons with some experience were mostly land battles, and they usually went to bully the giants on the ground. They did not have the corresponding aerial combat experience. Even though they had a natural advantage in terms of physical strength, the dragons were at a great disadvantage against the aerial forces of the Apocalypse Guards, which were 10 times their number. There was a huge difference in experience and numbers. As soon as the two sides clashed, the dragons were shot down like turkeys. Tyrande, Illidan, and Ronan, who were watching the battle from the ground, were stunned and did not know what to say. The number of dragons and Apocalypse Guards that fell was about 1 to 2, but the problem was that the Burning Legion had more aerial forces. The Apocalypse Guards covered the sky, and it seemed like there was no end to them. Originally, when the 5 dragon aspects attacked together, they had indeed suppressed the demon army. Their combat power was unparalleled, but ever since the appearance of the almost indomitable super demon Archimonde, the 5 dragon aspects had suffered a setback. Ronan was dumbfounded. Only at this moment did he realize how lucky his group was to defeat Archimonde 10,000 years later. That was because Archimonde had most of his power suppressed. This Archimonde had used the powerful power of the Well of Eternity to directly break through the planet's defense circle and summon his complete form. At his peak, Archaron's was simply an invincible existence. The claws of the 5 dragon aspects could not even leave a deep wound on his body. Even if they scratched a meter-deep wound, it would be perfectly repaired by the power of darkness in the next instant. Of all times, the damn Nesario jumped in the wrong direction. Just like in history, he used the demon soul to trap the dragon race. In his desperation, Krasus was willing to risk changing history to persuade the Red Dragon Queen not to inject her power into the dragon's soul. However, he was not an official member of the dragon race in this time and space, so his advice was ignored. Bad news came one after another. Tyrande, who had exhausted all of her mana on the battlefield, had been captured by the Satyr King Savis. This was undoubtedly a bolt out of the blue for Illidan, who was the only one left. Seeing Illidan's uncertain expression, Ronan finally realized that he had to pull the last force of Azeroth into the fray as soon as possible. He said to Grom and the others, "You guys stay in Fort Raven. I'll go find Cenarius." Originally, it would have been best to let Malfurion, the eldest disciple of Cenarius, negotiate, but Malfurion's soul was trapped. Ronan could only bite the bullet and go. In the city of Azeroth, Duque looked at the huge empty shelf in a daze. Without enough mana to tear open the dimensional barrier reinforced by the planet's magic circle, this portal was destined to be a decoration. However, it was Archimonde's job to deal with the Guardian or plunder enough mana. Du's bad taste kicked in, and he made the portal that was supposed to greet Sargeras into the style of the Dark Portal. The portal that was filled with the evil wind of darkness even gained the appreciation of the twins of Erida. The pair of beautiful demon sisters even hinted that Duque could have a friendly conversation with them at night to understand each other's strengths and weaknesses. As an upright and reliable young man, Duque decisively refused. "Oh, that's a pity. Infernal affairs, you clearly exude the scent of a female." Alisa's licked her coquettish lips. "Actually, sometimes I even feel that you're not a part of the Burning Legion. Compared to those violent and barbaric fellows, you're too law-abiding. Although the Legion doesn't mind adding some capable and disciplined strong people," Queen Saloras said pointedly. Duque opened his hands in a serious manner, and 2 extremely pure black flames emerged from his palms. Sorry, I love power the most. Only power is my ultimate pursuit. No one said that it's bad to pursue power. But other than power, other Eridar warlocks also have their own pursuits, such as, the twins probed faintly, or rather they were guiding Duque's attention. In fact, Duque had long discovered that a high elf lady was happily chatting with an Eridar warlock in the bushes 100 yards away. Duque knew that he couldn't stay here any longer. Before accomplishing his ultimate goal of tricking the Burning Legion, Duque had to pretend to be a fallen person who yearned for the life of a demon. The problem was that he was too obedient and followed the rules. Previously, Kil'jaeden had counted on him to open the door for Archimonde to descend, and the other small details could be ignored. Now that Archimonde had descended, in fact, Duque was no longer a necessary candidate for the Legion in Azeroth. If Duque wanted to carry out his plan, he had to continue to stay in the core position of the Legion. Then he had to think of ways to discredit himself and continue to gain Kil'jaeden's trust. It wasn't easy to deceive a demon commander. Duque was already thinking if he should find a chance to go to the front lines and slaughter thousands of night elves. On the other side, the twins were still egging Duque on. Actually, I know that Lord Sargeras doesn't like people like Queen Azhara. That's right. He had a strong taste and liked Garona. If you like, you can totally take that so-called queen, and then use your identity as a high-rank lord to announce that these high elves are your exclusive slave race. Sigh, I haven't even succeeded yet and I'm already tearing down the plank? Duque shrugged helplessly. It's a pity that I don't like to climb trees, and I don't like to climb a tree with dark purple bark. Auras rolled her eyes. What about her? Duque suddenly saw the figure of the priestess who had pale purple skin and was a little shorter than him. He spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1045. Duque was someone who paid attention to the bigger picture. If he did not, he would have been destroyed during the first Dark Portal. Even though he was known as the Destroyer of History, he was still trying his best to control the direction of the bigger picture and make Azeroth's situation better. Duque was a very timid person. But it was this kind of person who could always burst out with unimaginable courage when he was forced into a corner, slaying demons and ghosts along the way, even earning himself the title of a great hero. The conflicted Duque was, of course, very clear about the current situation. If he did not get rid of the Burning Legion during the War of the Ancients, or if he was exposed and died here, then everything would be over. If he did not get rid of the Burning Legion, Azeroth would be a land of death in 10,000 years. At the same time, Nosdorm would definitely be killed now, not 10,000 years later. If he died here, even if the outcome of the War of the Ancients was the same, it would be meaningless. Thus, preserving himself and maintaining the original outcome of the War of the Ancients were parallel and not conflicting. Duque never thought of himself as a saint who was compassionate and wanted to save all the innocent in the world. Thus, people and things that went against these 2 points could be sacrificed when necessary. Even if millions of elves had died since the start of the War of the Ancients, he did not have any psychological burden. To Duque, this was no different from when he commanded the Alliance's soldiers on the battlefield during the War of the Dark Portal and World War II. But when he saw Tyrande, this old comrade, Duque felt his balls ache. Just a second ago he had used the excuse of not wanting to climb a tree to reject Gemini's probing. The next second, Tyrande, what was the meaning of this? Even if he was unjustly attacked, this was not the way to lie down. This was like a beautiful backflip 10 times and then a 3,600-degree flip to the side to hit the muzzle of a gun. Do you want me to slap myself in the face and pretend to be gay? Do you believe that Gemini will immediately find a few strong and handsome men to trick me? Moreover, with a female demon like Gemini, it was obvious whether Tyrande had entered Duque's aesthetic range or not. At this moment, Duque suddenly entered a huge crisis that concerned his life and the survival of his soul. As long as he took a single wrong step, he would immediately be consigned to eternal damnation. Of course, as a traitor, he could immediately kill his way out of Azhara City and return to the Night Elf's side. However, if that were to happen, how would he be able to continue with the act of an egg pretending to rebel? If he rebelled and the Burning Legion didn't believe Illidan and killed him, then this show wouldn't be able to continue. Duque swallowed his saliva. Gemini immediately understood what Seiji meant. Auras' eyes were like silk. No wonder our Lord of the Infernal Affairs doesn't like ordinary goods. Queen Solola's even came closer and blew a breath of hot air on Duque's neck. A high priest of the indigenous gods. This is indeed something that those coquettish bitches can't compare to. Infernal Affairs, good eyes. What else could he say in the face of such unreliable likes from the Eridar twins? The only thing he could do in the spiritual world was to put on his signature 45-degree tearful pose. Actually, you guys don't understand my heart. I am innocent. I'm just a lowly and cowardly university animal. Which one of you will give me a yellow river? I want to wash away the stain on my name as the Duke of Beasts. Savis, who had become the Satyr King, strode into the hall with a few high elves who had voluntarily become satyrs. The unconscious tyrant, who was being carried by the back of her collar and swinging around like a puppet, not only attracted the attention of Duque and the others, but also the other Void Lords. Yo, Savis, looks like you brought back a good toy. A Lord of Morgur walked towards Savis. Morgur was a one-story tall humanoid demon. At first glance, it looked like an extremely burly humanoid fatty. Upon closer inspection, one would notice that it had a thick and deformed arm, as well as a huge foot with only 2 sharp toes. Savis frowned when he saw the newcomer, especially when he saw the skulls of the night elf priestesses tied around his waist that were filled with fear and malevolent expressions. Barbaro. This is the high priest of the moon goddess Elun, Tyrant Whisperwind. Savis seemed to emphasize. So what? I love torturing and killing the priestesses of the indigenous gods. Although many of them are still calling out their god's name until the last moment of their lives, most of them crumble when they see me torturing and killing their companions. They pray that I won't hurt them. But he? Evidently, the row of heads was the result of those who begged for mercy. Yo, Infernal, aren't you going to snatch that priestess? Once she falls into Barbaro's hands, she'll be gone soon. Queen Saloras incited Duque. At this moment, something unexpected happened. Perhaps it was Barbaro's foul breath that woke Tyrant up. Tyrant retaliated the moment she woke up. An unsuccessful counterattack. Savis, who was still carrying Tyrant, defeated her counterattack with a single spell. Originally, Barbaro should have grabbed Tyrant and pierced her body with his claws. But at this moment, a miracle happened. Tranquil moonlight suddenly shone from Tyrant's body, forming billions of tiny white runes that wrapped around her like a white veil. As the Lord of Morgur, Barbaro's deformed and thick arms could easily crush a dwarven steam tank into dough. However, his claws could not penetrate the 5 centimeters of space on Tyrant's body. It was a miraculous layer of absolute protection. What power is this? In a fit of rage, Barbaro grabbed Tyrant's petite body and flung her away. Tyrant was thrown into a daze. Ha! This time it wasn't just Duque. Even the other lords were interested in Tyrant. There were more than 10 lords in this hall. Most of them had just been teleported here and were still waiting for orders to go to the front lines. They all gathered and began to attack Tyrant with all sorts of methods. It was obvious that Elun was displaying her miracles to these barbaric Void Lords. The lords could seal Tyrant's attack power and even knock her unconscious, but they could not truly harm or torture her. The lords howled, but there was nothing they could do. This made Duque secretly heave a sigh of relief. According to the original history, the demon lords who were at their wits' end could only imprison Tyrant. Then there was the legendary scene of Tyrant's escape. Suddenly Elisis sneered. You useless things. Since you can't deal with her, then scram. Saloras put a hand on Duque's shoulder. Oh, infernal affairs, as long as you nod, we can help you deal with this Tyrant. Duque spat out a mouthful of blood. Damn it. Chapter 1046. The other lords have already given up on healing. What are you doing here, Gemini? Scram to the side. If Tyrant managed to escape in 2 days, everything would be fine. Duque really wanted to give Gemini a few slaps. Just then Duque suddenly thought of another problem. This seemed to be his fault. Without Duque stirring up trouble within the Burning Legion, Gemini would not have come to Azhara. Also, because he had many subordinates, in order to temporarily stabilize the High Elves, he ended up giving the High Elves a large number of demonic crystals. Now, the Queen and her subordinates were deeply grateful to the Burning Legion. In history, once the Archerons descended, the entire Legion ignored the High Elves who had lost their value. If he remembered correctly, it should be Kale, that's grandfather, Dasrima Sunstrider, who felt abandoned by the Burning Legion and chose to turn to the light. He released Tyrant, which led to Tyrant's miraculous return. Coupled with the fact that Goddess Elun had endorsed Tyrant and publicly praised her for her steadfastness, the Arcane faction had been eliminated and most of the Nature faction's demigods had knelt down. This was how Tyrant, as the High Priestess, was able to rise to power. Alright, it's all a mess now. Even if Goddess Elun protected Tyrant, no one would be able to release Tyrant. Just as Duque was thinking, the female demon Elisis came up to add fuel to the fire. Oh, infernal affairs. Do you like this woman? Say something for us sisters. Seeing that he could not avoid it, Duque decided to show off. His domineering gaze swept across the place as he sneered softly. Since no one can handle it, then let Gemini handle it. Most of the people here were mid-level or low-level lords. With Duque, a high-level void lord, speaking of course, they did not dare to have any objections. At this time Queen Seiloras smirked. By the way, Your Excellency, this is a private matter. Duque firmly believed that Elun would definitely protect Tyrant, so he did not hesitate to show off to the end. He elegantly turned around and walked away. As he left he said, "Hee hee." It was obvious that unless the 3 heavyweights of the Burning Legion took action, no one would be able to do anything to this woman. Well, 2,000 top-grade demonic crystals, I bet you can't handle it. If you really can't do anything to her, just throw her into the highest level prison and lock her up for now. On the other side, Tyrant was being tormented by the group of Void Dukes. However, she stubbornly stood up and glared at Duque's back. She did not understand the language of Eridar, but she instinctively felt that this group of evil and violent lords were using her as a wager. A pair of purple and a pair of crimson Eridar demon hooves stood in front of Tyrant. Tyrant raised her head and looked at the 2 beautiful faces filled with mockery and malice. She felt like vomiting. She really wanted to turn her angry gaze into the moon god's arrow and shoot these 2 bewitching demonesses in front of her. Unfortunately, with her power completely sealed, it was difficult for her to even move a finger. Let's go, beauty. Let big sister teach you how to be a qualified slave. Elisa spoke in perfect Kadoriai language. Don't even think about it. I will never give in. Tyrant's voice was sonorous and forceful. That might not necessarily be the case. Queen Seiloras smiled wickedly. Tyrant could not help but feel her heart palpitate as she looked at the pair of eyes filled with absolute confidence. The great moon goddess Elun will definitely protect me. As if in response to her vow, the faint layer of white light around Tyrant seemed to become even brighter. Suddenly, Gemini grabbed both of Tyrant's arms and lifted her up. Let's go, beauty. Let us tell you, at first it was 1 sentence each, but in the end it was Gemini who spoke at the same time. There are many places in this world where the moon cannot shine. Tyrant felt her heart beating wildly. For the first time in her life she realized that anxiety and hesitation could swallow her heart. It was late at night. Duque had a side hall in the magnificent Azhara Palace. Archimonde had come and gone, and the High Elves had reaped the benefits. Queen Azhara almost wanted to give her main hall to Duque. At this time Duque really could not sleep. According to the script, once Illidan pretended to be under Sargeras and stole the demon's soul, everything would be settled. Why did this mess with Tyrant happen? Duque's face was full of gloom. Damn Elun, you have to do your best. That's your high priestess, your chosen one. You can't even protect her and you're counting on me, an outsider? In the end, this is all Nosdormu's fault. Damn it. If you didn't throw me into the twisting nether and let me be a hero of justice, go through the motions, you'd be good, I'd be good, everyone would be good. Then everyone would be happy. Speaking of which, I'm feeling uneasy tonight. Something big must have happened. No, I have to confirm my escape route. Just as Duque was letting his imagination run wild in the long river of history, Nosdormu, who had been cursed by Duque, had actually been working. An ancient force violently attacked Nosdormu's dragon body. His time dragon body could easily traverse time and the void, but at this moment he had a terrifying premonition that he was about to be torn to pieces. The 4 major elements of earth, water, fire, and wind were driven by a primitive and uncontrollable mysterious force, spinning wildly around his body. Not to mention the time point of the ancient war 10,000 years ago, even if he forced himself to stay where he was, he would have a premonition that his life would be in danger at any time. The mysterious force in front of him was getting more and more terrifying. Nosdormu estimated that even if he forced himself to resist, he wouldn't be able to last until the ancient war. Nosdormu sighed and suddenly spat out a small dragon's breath in front of him. After that, the giant time dragon king seemed to be pulled by something, and was suddenly pulled back to the door of darkness 15 years ago. This strange dragon's breath, which was like a small flying arrow, easily passed through thousands of blurry scenes and everything in the world. It suddenly passed through the barrier of time and space, and silently appeared behind Duque. Originally, the situation in the next moment should have been the gathering of a large amount of time power, continuously attacking Duque's senses. Nosdormu would never know that in order to prevent Duque from being frightened or confused, he had set up a few more mental barriers. All inquiries had to be filtered by the system ALF before reaching Duque's senses. In the end, Duque had no idea what was going on. At this moment, Duque was shocked to find that the door to his bedroom had been pushed open. Tyrant, who was wearing a long white nightgown, flashed in. There was no trace of moon god power on her body. Duque was dumbfounded. Chapter 1047. The Burning Legion was not going to be easy. Duque knew this from the first day he crossed over to the world of Azeroth. Duke's balls ached as he looked at the system's highlighted red outline on his retina. The Eridar Gemini was hiding in a house 100 meters away. Their devil horns and hooves were clearly outlined and Duke's balls ached. This was the Gemini's test and also Kill Jaden's test. A person who did not know how to conquer, destroy or kill, no matter how strong he was, could not be given such a heavy responsibility. If Duque dared to escape with Tyron now, Archimonde might come back with a group of Lords of the Abyss in the next moment. The moonlight was as calm as water flowing on Tyron's body. However, it was as if flowing water had hit an invisible barrier, and the moonlight was repelled. Duque was stunned. This was not because Elune refused to bless Tyrant, but because Tyron was using her own will to resist Elune's power entering her body. Tyron's nightgown was not tied with a rope. She was purely using her left hand to pull the left hem over the right. It was this half-naked action that made Duque's mouth dry up. Yes, Duque could not deny that he was actually a fan of elves. This was evident from the fact that he had 3 high elves in his house. As for Tyrant, who had been imagined by countless players as a doujinshi, Duque did have a slight desire in his heart. Originally, there would not have been anything but in the shadow form, especially when the dark energy in his body was not converted for a long time. Duque was stunned to discover that his body had a kind of restless feeling. This feeling was not good. It was the temptation of darkness. Duque secretly took a deep breath, then pretended to be ignorant. Why don't you let your goddess protect you? Tyrant, who had been silent all this while, suddenly erupted like a volcano. Her eyebrows furrowed, and an expression of anger appeared on her face. Demon. What are you pretending for? You were the one who instructed those 2 damned female demons to bring me to the twisting nether and threaten me with the safety of over 100 of my sisters. Are you still going to pretend to be innocent here? All right. As you wish. I'm here. Tyrant was obviously gritting her teeth in anger, but as she spoke, her aura weakened. Her originally fierce steps became soft and small, and she finally knelt in front of Duque. 2 streams of tears rolled down Tyrant's beautiful face. She sobbed uncontrollably. As long as you promise to let my sisters go and not kill them, I will fulfill my promise and become your possession. Duque's teeth hurt. His balls hurt. His head hurt. His entire body hurt. He finally understood what Gemini had done. Elune was indeed amazing. She was actually able to protect Tyrant in the midst of the enemy's formation. But in history, it was only preserved because there were no intelligent demons like the Gemini twins. Gemini had broken Elune's seemingly invincible protection with just a little trick. They used a portal to bring Tyrant back to the twisting nether. Of course, Elune's power could not reach the twisting nether. As a result, they used a large amount of dark energy to wash away the protective barrier on Tyrant's body. The moment the barrier was broken, Tyrant's final trump card was shattered mercilessly. Needless to say, Gemini was very good at playing with people's hearts. They could have used violence to make Tyrant submit, but they chose a more effective method, taking hostages. The priestesses of Elune were like sisters, and that was how the famous Elune sisterhood came to be. Since that was the case, everything became simple. In fact, Gemini could have made Tyrant submit completely. But they were afraid that Duque would lose interest, and that was how things turned out. Duque knew that there was no way to resolve this matter peacefully. He frowned and flicked his left hand. 2 dark rays pierced through the wall and shot at Gemini, who was hiding 100 meters away. The attack was vicious, but there was a smile on his face. Hey, it's not polite to peek. Can you 2 please stay away from me? Duque did not intend to kill, and Gemini took it as a friendly invitation to leave. Gemini's bewitching giggles resounded in the night sky. This caused Tyrant's expression to change again. At this moment, sitting on a luxurious 3-seater sofa, the dark energy around Duque's body expanded, forming a huge black fog. Duque said in a deep voice, "Since you have sworn to become my possession, then come over." Tyrant's body trembled, and the tears in her eyes flowed even more. In the end, she stood up slowly as if she had made up her mind to fall into the abyss, and stepped into the black fog. Unexpectedly, she was caught the moment she stepped in and sat on Duque's lap. "Tyrant, you've met Roddick and the others, right? I'm Roddick's teacher." Tyron's body trembled again. She never would have thought that the spellcaster that Roddick spoke of, who was hiding within the Burning Legion, was actually such a high-ranking Void Lord, the future star of the Burning Legion, the spellcaster. You? Impossible. Tyron's eyes widened. I also hoped that I wouldn't run into you. But the commander of the Burning Legion, killed Jaden, has already started to suspect me. Duque could be considered a straightforward person, and he explained in detail that he had mistakenly entered the Twisting Nether, and was caught as a test subject. In the end, he was modified by dark energy, and became a lord. Aside from the fact that he and his group had transmigrated 10,000 years later, Duque told Tyron everything about himself and his plans. Tyron was so shocked that she could not close her mouth. This sounded like a fantasy story. Spellcaster, you said that you purposely infiltrated the enemy camp to destroy the Burning Legion's main force, and then waited for the Dragon Aspects, Dragon Soul, to cooperate with you to blow up the portal and destroy the Burning Legion's main force? Tyron could not keep up with Duque's train of thought. In the end, she was stunned by Duque's huge and crazy plan. You've been to the Twisting Nether, and the Eridar twins should have shown you how huge the Burning Legion's fleet is, and how many demons there are, right? Tyron recalled the countless dark-powered starships in the sky, and then the demonic army that filled every single one of them, and she shuddered. She could not help but nod. There are too many demons. If we just let the Azeroth race fight them, they won't be able to kill them all even if they die 100 times. And as long as the demons don't die in the Twisting Nether, they can be resurrected infinitely. My plan is to destroy the Burning Legion's main force once and for all. But there's a precondition. Tyron's voice trembled as she continued, you can't be exposed. Yes, make your choice. I can give you a chance to contact Alun. If you choose to leave, I will take you with me. It all depends on who will complete my plan. Of course, you can also choose to make a sacrifice. Chapter 1048. Tyron was dumbfounded. If not for the fact that millions of her brethren had been slaughtered by demons, she would not have been so sad and angry. If not for the fact that she could not resist the spread of evil, she would not have been captured and sent here. If not for the fact that she had seen with her own eyes how huge the Burning Legion's fleet was, she would not have felt so afraid. Perhaps Duque had given her a choice, but Duque, who did not feel the reality of the elves being slaughtered, did not realize that Tyron was actually forced into a dead end. Suddenly, Tyron's body stopped trembling, and her eyes that were starting to lose focus became determined again. She did not turn back and just sat on Duque's lap and said, "Can you pray for me one last time? I want to report what happened to you to Goddess Alun." Yes. The black fog that enveloped the two dispersed. Tyron walked slowly towards the window with graceful steps. There, a large cluster of pure white moonlight illuminated a large piece of marble floor, making it look as if it was daytime. Gently taking off his nightgown, Duque, who was sitting on the sofa, saw a bewitching figure. The priestess began her prayer devoutly. Looking from behind, the towering peaks of Hyjal were actually wrapped around by two small golden snakes that emitted a demonic aura. The top of the snake's head was holding the small protruding stump of the world tree in its mouth. Duque suddenly felt that the dark energy in his heart seemed to be restless. The moonlight was incomparably gentle and beautiful. The pure and beautiful moonlight formed a sharp contrast with this perfect and seductive female figure. The prayer did not continue for long. Tyron turned back, revealing a beautiful face that was either crying or smiling. If one ignored the faint purple capillaries on her fair face, Duque suddenly realized that she really did look a little like the Windrunner sisters. The same determination, the same love for their brethren, and the same willingness to sacrifice themselves. Tyron turned around without a word, and once again stepped into Duque's black fog, allowing the black fog to envelop her. She knew that this was because Duque had blocked all probing from the outside world. Duque's voice was dry. What did Alun say? Tyron sat down beside Duque, not bothering to hide the bitterness on her face. She said, "I'm sorry, my child." Duque slapped his forehead. Damn it. He was speechless towards Alun. But if it was Alun, perhaps she had no other choice. There had been too many sacrifices, and no one knew how much more they would have to pay to see the dawn of victory. In the face of a terrifying enemy like the Burning Legion, a priestess was nothing. Duque turned around and looked at Tyron with a pained expression. At this moment he finally understood why Tyron hated him so much when they first met 10,000 years later. It was because he had returned to the ancient war and caused such a mess. If he was Tyron, he would also hate him for 10,000 years. However, this fallacy was also a pain in the ass. Duque, who had been in the dark portal for 15 years, had returned to the ancient war and offended Tyrant 10,000 years ago. In the end, Tyrant had taken revenge 10,000 years later. Thinking of how much Tyrant hated him at that point in time, Duque decided to go all out. Holding two Mount Hyjal, Duque spouted nonsense with a straight face. Everything is for the sake of destroying the Burning Legion, for the sake of victory. So, I'm sorry? Tyrant clenched her teeth, and her cheeks were almost bleeding. She nodded heavily. I have long since sworn to give everything I have to Elune. Since this is the will of the goddess, I have no regrets. All right, Miss Offering, please accept this terrifying combo from another world. Invented by Mr. Jean and brought to glory by Lord Wei, the godly technique, picking up girls. Sob sob. 10 minutes later. Please accept this invincible technique from Dongying from another world. Ito 48 hands. You. Duque had been fine at first, but the problem was that Duque's illness had flared up. For no reason at all, the 7 major sins, which had not flared up for more than 10 years, suddenly flared up. Which one was it? Make a guess. If you guess wrong, it's my loss. Tyrant felt bitter on the spot. She had been shot. It was like a little girl who believed in the existence of Santa Claus had suddenly been fed more than 10 terabytes of action movies by a bad guy. Even though priestesses had regenerative abilities that surpassed priests, Tyrant Whisperwind, unfortunately tragedy still befell her. The next morning, Duque, who had finally broken free from the 7 major sins state, could not find any words to describe this tragic battlefield. Wait, I need some quiet time. Alright, fortunately no one here would ask who quiet time was. Just as Duque assumed the pose of the thinker, a pair of eyes filled with anger, fear, humiliation, obedience, resignation, and other incomparably complex emotions met his. For a moment, Duque almost thought that he would have to endure 100 starfall attacks. But in the end, it was Tyrant who silently helped Duque put on his clothes. Seeing that Duque was still shrouded by the black fog, Tyrant pretended to be very docile as she hugged Duque from behind. The two of them were pressed together, and with her still tear-stained face, she said something that did not match her expression at all. Don't lie to me. Otherwise, even if I die, my goddess and my sisters will hunt you down to the ends of the universe. Duque took a deep breath. I will definitely do my best to destroy the main force of the Burning Legion. At the very least, these demons will not be able to invade Azeroth for the next 10,000 years. I will remember your vow. Tyrant's expression was as gentle as water, but she was actually gritting her teeth as she spoke. At first, Tyrant had wanted to pretend to be a tamed slave and follow Duque out. Unfortunately, the moment she stood up, she immediately knelt down. She was so ashamed that she wanted to die. She tried to use the holy light to heal herself before continuing. The problem was that there was a kind of pain that was called residual pain. She could only give up. Duque sighed and walked out of the hall. As expected, he saw Eridar's Gemini with a mocking expression. Ah, not bad infernal affairs. We really did not misjudge you. Facing the Gemini's you know what I mean expression, Duque's face was full of righteousness, as if he did not understand what they were saying. The more Duque behaved like this, the more the Gemini believed that Duque had fallen. At this moment, outside of Azeroth, a knight wearing a hood and riding a Shadowmaw panther approached the city walls. The hellhounds that were wandering outside the city were easily sucked dry by him. He almost killed his way all the way to the front of the city wall. A gate that had been strengthened with magic blocked him. The night elf guards who were loyal to the queen were glaring at him with their heads lowered. He walked forward and took off his hood. He was the famous Illidan Stormrage. I am here to serve my queen. Illidan shouted. He was obviously not shouting at the guards. He was shouting at someone in the palace. I am here to serve my queen, and the leader of the Burning Legion. Chapter 1049. That day Duque was a little bored. As the person in charge of the Burning Legion in Azhara, Duque needed to ensure that the forward operating base of Azhara would not fall. As for the portal that Salus always used, it was just a decoration. Everyone knew that before killing the dragon aspect or obtaining a stronger source of magic, it could not be opened. Jaden did not rush Duque and he was happy to be at ease. After browsing through the battle reports of the Burning Legion's higher-ups on the magic mirror that could transmit information, Duque yawned. Basically, all paths were swept away and there was no resistance at all. Only the northwest side of Old Kalimdor near Mount Hyjal, the Burning Legion was stuck in a quagmire of resistance. This was because a large number of demigods in Azeroth had made their move. They tried to counterattack the legion, consciously avoiding Archimonde and only targeting the other legions on the flanks. The Burning Legion lost a few lords and returned to the Twisting Nether. Archimonde was furious, and sent a few of the more capable lords who were on standby in Azhara to the front lines. But this had nothing to do with Duque. The queen invited me to watch a dance? Duque tilted his head when he received the message from the 3 elven maids. Initially, Duque did not want to go, but Duque did not want to go back to his palace, because he did not know how to face Tyrant. After some thought, Duque agreed. After handing over some trivial matters to the Gemini, Duque went to the queen's palace. Azhara was obviously surprised that Duque had agreed to watch the dance. After all, Duque had been using work as an excuse to avoid the invitations of the High Elves. For a period of time, Azhara almost thought that Duque was a stubborn demon who was extremely self-disciplined and difficult to deal with. With Archimonde's arrival and the supply of high-purity demonic crystals to the High Elves, as well as the news she received last night, Azhara's view of Duque had changed. Before Sargeras arrived, her dream of becoming the Demon Queen was temporarily over. The commander of the army, Archimonde, was also a typical warrior, a boorish man. Azhara, who could not find any connections, seemed to want to invest more in Duque. Duque saw through this but did not point it out. After all, Queen Azhara was not a good person. Invest. Just invest as much as you want. In any case, regardless of whether I succeed or fail, you will suffer a loss. If I can't make you die, consider it my loss. Duque made up his mind. If Azhara dared to throw a sugar-coated bullet at him, then he would eat the sugar and send the bullet flying back. After some small talk, Duque sat on the sofa beside Queen Azhara's lounge chair. With a look from Queen, the band next to her immediately started playing. Unlike the pure and natural Night Elves' music, the High Elves' music could be said to be decadent. This was an era without violins, but there were harps and unknown stringed instruments similar to the zither of the Night Elves. Accompanied by the provocative sound of the harp and soft percussion, the heavy curtain that covered the roof suddenly opened. It was an elven girl with fair skin. She danced a rather gentle elven dance to the music. The accompaniment gradually became more intense, and the girl's dance became more and more relaxed. Soon it was no longer that relaxed. Duque could feel the explosive feeling in his mind. She threw Duque a flying glance, her snow-white dress fluttering in the surging wind. Following the ever-changing rhythm, the elven girl kept moving her fair and flat abdomen. Her 5 fingers that were as white as spring onions gently spread out, her pinky and ring fingers curving inwards towards her palm. Intentionally or unintentionally, she stuck out her Atlank Mountains. That's right, it was not as high as Tyrant's, but it was still a grade lower than the Atlank Mountains, and it had the whiteness of a snow mountain. Obviously, Night Elves would not have such skin color. Duque could even feel that this should be some kind of exaggerated magical transformation. Queen Azhara was also very efficient, coming up with it in one night. Duque suddenly smiled bitterly. But this was also to his liking. At least it was better than looking at purple High Elves every day and thinking that they might have a purple child. The elven girl waved her perky arms with all her might. Her bare feet were as white as snow, and she displayed all of her beauty with her extremely fast and complicated body movements. The fast dance steps were like the European foxtrot. Her dancing was sometimes elegant, sometimes sensual, sometimes charming, and sometimes mysterious. Furthermore, because there was not much cloth on her upper body, only 2 palm-wide cloth straps that wrapped from the back of her neck to the front of her chest, the girl's dance also had the alluring characteristics of a belly dance, and it was too much for the eyes to take in. Her expression was so confident, so proud, so ambiguous, and so seductive. It was as if she was the goddess of beauty, Venus. Everything was so seductive and full of beauty. Duque seemed to be in a trance. It was as if the elven girl in front of him had completely overlapped with the artificial beauties in South Korea before he transmigrated. As she wriggled, a large piece of the elven girl's long skirt fell off, and he could see an opening that looked like a cheongsam from the side, revealing the sexy and slender side of her thighs. As she wriggled, she kicked off her high heels, revealing a pair of smooth and small feet. As she wriggled, the queen had quietly left the scene, and the curtains blocked the surroundings. It was as if only the girl and Duque were left in the whole world. Without a doubt, this elven girl was a seductress-level beauty. Her body was a mixture of an angel and a demon. Angels had the fairest skin, while demons had the most voluptuous bodies. The seductress had 2 great advantages, and that seductive dance was enough to arouse the interest of any man in the world. Looking at the elven girl who was already kneeling between his legs and secretly showing off her beauty, and looking at him with an expectant gaze, Duque's balls ached. He, who was still in a state of back pain, was powerless. "You're not bad. Did Her Majesty say anything to you?" Duque's lips curled into a smile. "From today onwards, I'm the possession of Lord Infernal Affairs." The girl was trembling a little. Her eyes were filled with passion and fear. She was afraid that Duque would reject her. She couldn't imagine that she had committed such a great sin and had to change her body. Her skin had become fair, and it was impossible for her to change back. Just like her compatriots who had become satyrs, this transformation was irreversible. If she still wasn't accepted by Duque, she didn't dare to imagine what would happen to her when she returned. The queen had never been a truly benevolent ruler. "All right, you'll follow me." You're tuning in to the Han Lee's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.